Hi, Bram.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hey, just so we pronounce your name correctly, should we call you by your last name, Mr.
Doctor?
Doctor?
Yes, Dr. Shiva, Ayyadurai, and you can just call me Dr. Shiva after that.
Okay, Dr. Shiva, Ayyadurai. Yeah. Dr. Shiva.
Okay, we're live
Ayyadurai.
Now? Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, for showing up. This is the first online town hall in history, and thank you, Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, for Ariel, could you please mute your YouTube stream? So there are going to be some hiccups, but I'll be handling the technical issues while James handles the moderating. As people come through, I'll go ahead and handle that. So I want to introduce you to us. We're basically very politically active. A lot of us may be in the progressive circles. I'm pretty independent. Some are libertarians, some are pretty progressive, so we're kind of a good mix. There are going to be a lot of rules dictated here, so be respectful, be direct, no personal attacks, no attacks period, and we're here to give Dr. Shiva exposure as a candidate and to talk about issues and have him answer questions directly from people from all over the country. So thank you, Dr. Shiva. James, please introduce yourself, and then we'll give Dr. Shiva a 5-minute introduction. He could introduce himself whichever way he wants. He is limited on time because he does have an early morning meeting, so it's going to be stopping at 11 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay, thank you very much, Ivan, for putting this together. Dr. Shiva, thank you so much for being here today. We truly appreciate it. The way it's going to work is introduce yourself. Everybody that's coming on, they're going to get one question to ask you. And then if we can do another round, we'll do another round, depending on how fast that goes. We'll give you like a couple minutes to answer those questions, if that's okay with you. Unless you need to go a little longer, we're okay with that. We're going to have some people that have some questions through the live chat. Hopefully we can get a few through there. And then we'll kind of just at the end, just let people ask a few questions if it's even possible at the very end. And then what we'll do after that is just thank you very much, and we appreciate you being here. Anyway, thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Tell us a little bit about you and what's going on.
Oh, do you want me to talk?
Yeah.
Sure.
I hear you.
Well, I'm in Boston right now. It's late here. I've had a long day. You know, I'm originally an immigrant from India. Came here in 1970. Went through the public school systems, and I've had an extraordinary, journey through the American dream. Came to MIT, did 4 different degrees, created the first email system in the world, created 7 other companies after that. And then I've been a student of political history all my life, a political activist. I never really cared for either party. When Trump ran, I thought it was a necessary disruption, which inspired me to run. And I think we're at an important point in American history where there's real opportunities to understand what is truth and what is lies, and what is the establishment, and who are the people that need to be served versus the 2-party system, which actually serves nobody.
That's fantastic. Thank you. A lot of us actually do feel the same way. We're actually very, very upset, but we're tolerant. We're just looking for hopefully some new ways and some new direction for a country we feel that is a little out of control and a little chaotic at this time. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and ask, if it's okay with you, ask the first question, since I am the moderator. And my first question is, knowing that there's islands the size of, plastic and polluted islands the size of Texas spinning around in some of our oceans, like the Pacific, You've got Fukushima that's also spewing out nuclear waste. You've got our carbon levels raising at a very exponential and high rate that's compounding all the time. Have you ever heard of the Green New Deal? And do you believe that we should start putting a cap on fossil fuels and nuclear and try to move towards a greener industry?
Well, look, this comes down to, I did a video on the Paris Accords. If people want to go on YouTube and look at it, look, I think everyone wants clean air, clean land, and clean water. I don't think anyone does not want this. The issue is, how do we get that? And there's one set of people who want to regulate this and have created scams, because throughout history you'll see when there are problems, like look what's going on with Houston, the Red Cross, the Clinton Bush Foundation, they have a history of raping people, like with what occurred in Haiti, right? They're vultures. They're people who take advantage of situations. When you look at something like the environment and you look at the Paris Accords, for example, it has nothing to do with helping pollution, cleaning landfills, helping plastics. What it has to do is lining the pockets of Al Gore and the IPCC and their functionaries. And so if you really, really look at it, how do you actually solve these problems? It's going to come through innovation. It's not going to come through Al Gore, who's never invented anything in his life, doesn't know how to solve anything, but these people are profiting from wanting to, quote unquote, green the world through things like the carbon tax. And if you really unfold what the Paris Accords is about, today, China pollutes around 11 billion tons of carbon, the US around 4 billion, I believe India about 3 billion. And the goal with the Paris Accords is by 2030, China actually can pollute another 11 billion, get up to 22 billion. Does that sound like we're helping the environment? And after 2030, what happens is carbon tax kicks in, and the carbon tax consortium, which is a equity that's traded on the public markets, will explode in value, and people like Gore will make a ton of money off of that.
So, sorry to interrupt. So we're short on time. So if you want to get back to this answer, we can later. I just want to move on so everyone gets a question. I'm just limiting the time to 2 minutes.
Sorry about that.
That's right. So I won't ask a question. I want to ask a question because Kelly Lane, she's another host moderator. She's going to the Convergence Summit. I won't ask a question. I want to ask. Sorry about that, Lucas. Please.
I'm getting an echo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's someone isn't adhering to the rules. Anyways, her question is: there's an ongoing Reuters investigation that found another 449 areas around the U.S. with lead exposure rates double those found in Flint, but cities across the country say pending federal budget cuts could imperil efforts to eradicate the toxic metal. President Trump is preparing to gut those programs. What are your thoughts?
Well, a lot of these programs, you got to understand, they've been around for a long time, right? And I'm not sure the efficacy of them. I haven't had a chance to actually look at the programs and what they're really about. They've been around through Obama's time. They've been around through Bush's time, probably through Clinton's time. This is not a Trump issue. Flint is not something caused by Trump. It's something caused by the fact that you have corrupt officials in cities. And if you look at the entire political environment and how it's run through corruption and through career politicians. So I don't think this really has anything to do with Trump. Ultimately, most of these things have to do with the fact that there's crony capitalism, and career politicians care about one thing, which is about getting elected. They have no interest in solving any problem because many times solving problems actually may put them out of work. So I haven't had a chance to read this, but I can tell you that Flint, when you actually unravel it, it comes down to the fact that many people actually did know about this and no one really wanted to address it. And the way that operation took place, it was just done completely with incompetence.
All right, thank you. So Bram, go ahead and ask your question.
My question to you, Dr. Shiva, is related to economics, and I want to know what your take is on GlassSteagall and whether or not you would reenact it or come up with a similar proposal on your own.
Yeah, is there specifically something within GlassSteagall that you're particularly, is there some aspect of it, because it's pretty significant, right?
That's correct.
It's within the Banking Act, right, of 1933, right?
Right.
Because is there something particular with it? Because I can speak to a variety of things,
Well, in particular, in regards to GlassSteagall, the limitation as to how much the banks have to have on hand in terms of liquid assets, as opposed to what they are making available for loans.
Yeah, here's the whole deal, right? Because essentially they use this model of factoring, right?
Right.
And it's basically they're dealing, the larger piece is these guys are essentially dealing in vaporware. It goes back many, many thousands of years. It's probably why Jesus took the whip and whipped people in the temple, right? And these people are essentially, the original model was, for each, currency, there was something that it was backed by. And I think this is a larger question that really comes back to the Fed, right? The whole banking system. I forget who said this. I think if it was Kissinger or someone who said, if we really understood how the banking system worked, there'd be a revolution in this country. And I think the primary issue here is that these guys are essentially underwriting loans, and they do not have sufficient assets to back their loans. I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Well, that and in separating investment banking from our savings banks.
Yeah, to me, these aren't even. This is what should be done from day one. The same thing is what brought on if you remember, the .com crisis, right? You had related to this, the investment banks were also colluding with the analysts, and there was supposed to be a Chinese wall, and those Chinese walls, frankly, do not exist. These are all just things that we're told that they exist, but in fact, there's all sorts of conflict of interest, and it's very, very cleverly managed by the swamp. So I think when you really look at, the fundamentals of this, the entire banking system from GlassSteagall, you can even start, it's sort of its relative, Dodd-Frank. These were all done to essentially destroy small local banks ultimately, and essentially create an environment where you could have tremendous amount of collusion as needed so people could manipulate the monetary system.
Okay, we have to move on to the next.
Okay.
Okay, we have to move on to the next question. I'm sorry. Eric, go ahead.
No, I wanted to give Ariel and Snork a chance.
Okay, go ahead, Ariel.
Okay, hi, Dr. Shiva. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm a self-employed small business owner in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm successful with my work, but I still cannot afford the high cost of health insurance. The Affordable Care Act did not help me and most people I know who are self-employed, as the cost was still too high to be feasible. I've been watching with strong interest the battle for single payer in the state of California as physicians and nurses take on Speaker Rendon to pass SB 562. In a time where racial, religious, and gender inequality are greatly felt, making sure all Americans have the same access to medical care would go a long way towards establishing balance and harmony for everyone. I would like to know your position on making sure all Americans have access to high-quality health care, and do you support single payer or the expansion and improvement of Medicare for all?
Yeah, so let's, this is a really, really important question, right? So you've used a number of terms which have some interest. Let's just take health care, right? Or Affordable Health Care Act. What is health care here? What we right now have in America, and this is a subject that I've studied very closely, is we don't really have health, quote unquote, health care.
Correct.
We really have a health insurance model.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a health insurance model. We have a model that makes all of us captive to an insurance industry. Romney Care, aka Obamacare, we're literally, Obama and Romney were salespeople for the insurance industry. And the big insurance industry, which by the way has had record profits year over year for the last 5 years, they are essentially in collusion with big pharma and big hospitals. What is not being addressed in any of this, when you say high quality care, we got to really understand what that means, because most of the care we're talking about, someone is typing away, it's a little bit loud.
I'm sorry,
but
my
what
fault.
we're really talking about is not health. We're talking about crisis management.
Yes.
The modern healthcare system really comes out of wartime medicine, putting a soldier back on the field. So all of the healthcare we're talking about is knives, which is invasive surgeries, and medicine. Most of the payouts that are done are for chronic ailments, about 80%. The remaining 20% split into your sort of your regular visits, and then the other piece is for massive catastrophes if they take place, which are relatively rare. But the real issue is that we've created big hospitals, big pharma, and big industry. And when we say we want to fund that, I don't want to fund any of that, because it has nothing to do with healthcare.
Right.
What it has to do with is bloating these people up. The other part of this is, if you really look at the costs here, it really comes down to drug development. It takes about 13 to 15 years to create a single drug, $5 billion. If the patent life is 20 years, the pharma companies want to recoup the remaining 5 years. The cost of drugs is explosively high, and the way to resolve it is through innovation. One of the companies I've created, Cytosolve, we discovered a drug for pancreatic cancer, got it allowed by the FDA in 11 months, because we use computer simulation and modeling, so you don't have to kill animals, you don't have to do a lot of in vitro testing.
Yes.
So none of these politicians understand any of these dynamics. They are talking all day. Obama doesn't know anything about healthcare.
No.
The guy's a lawyer, So we really need to change what the discussion here is.
Yes.
The discussion really is, how are we going to reduce the cost of creating drugs? Why is all these procedures being done when you don't need them, and the cost of it? And the more important part of it is prevention.
Right. Yes.
We don't have enough doctors. We have less doctors per capita than Cuba. And the
Agreed.
doctors are not trained in health. They're not trained in nutrition. No one talks about pesticides. Most Congress people are getting paid off by Monsanto. And we've destroyed the soil in this country. Glyphosate, Roundup. These issues are what should be talked about.
Yes.
But
I absolutely agree.
Do you support single payer? Why do I want to support single payer? For what? Garbage healthcare?
Right.
If we could actually lower the price of drugs, which we can, if we could actually unleash doctors to be actual healthcare professionals, we've lost about 150,000 doctors to big hospitals. My sister went to Harvard Medical School. She can't work as a doctor.
Right.
Because the regulations are so high, she has to hire 3 different people.
Wow.
So what Elizabeth Warren, what the Democrats, Romney, the Republican establishment have done is they've created an environment for big insurance companies to make a ton of money, and big pharma to be bloated, which is a failing industry, and big hospitals. But what's really cool is everyday people realizing, why do I need this healthcare? 36 million people practice yoga. Supplements are explosively growing. People are figuring out things on their own. So, I think you should have some level of catastrophic, God forbid something awful happens. But this amount of premiums we pay, what are we paying for?
Correct.
All right. Thank you for that.
For people to eat at McDonald's. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for your answer, and I definitely agree with you on preventative care and health. That's a huge part of it. Thank you.
So, Dr. Shiva, we're getting close to time. Is it okay to ask 2 more questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And I definitely agree with you on preventative.
Thanks, Snork.
No, okay. Please, sorry. Snork, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm a manufacturing engineer. A lot of manufacturing engineers and other engineers throughout the country are kind of sorry, cough drop, are kind of gagged right now on what they can talk about on some really severe issues, Fukushima and all other issues like this. What would you do as a senator to reduce the roadblocks to us bringing up huge problems that we see, that we can't talk about, that we can't ask universities to look into, that basically if we bring them up, we're either forced to a large lawsuit or arrest or containment for the rest of our life?
I guess I don't understand. What do you mean, you as a man, you can't talk about Fukushima? I don't know what you mean.
Well, I mean, like if we have special knowledge of anything that's happening, if a corporation, not just Fukushima, but I'm talking about after Fukushima, that in Canada, in some places in the United States, colleges were threatened to lose funding if they did any investigations on that topic. And as after 9/11, there was a gag order on engineers being any kind of whistleblower. Really, it still left fear in the engineering practical side, not so much the academic, but even on the practical side, not mentioning anything your company does. So how
I think if you look at the fundamentals of this reality that's going on, it's because starting around the 1940s, for example, one of the things was when Vannevar Bush, who was a former president of MIT, spun out and created Raytheon. That was the beginning of the end of real academic free speech, because what you had is public funds were being diverted to support the military-industrial complex, in this case Raytheon, and there's many examples. So starting from the 40s onward, universities were supposed to be an environment where you had radical people, being able to be protected and talk about radical ideas. What's happened since over the last 70 years is you have lemmings in academia, and it's pay-to-play science. So what that's created is an environment now, and remember, academics get tenure. They get treated quite well as royalty, if you look at their health care benefits and all of that. So it's a modern day priesthood, and that priesthood controls narratives and dialogue. And one of the biggest things I think we need to do is eliminate tenure. Because we literally, like in India, we used to have the caste system. We have a caste system now, which is a collusion of academics with the scribes, which is the media, and politicians. Eisenhower called it the military-industrial complex. Fulbright called it the military-industrial academic complex. And that triangle essentially suffocates discourse. So they'll give democracy, quote-unquote democracy, within the bounds that they agree are open for discourse. But like you said, certain things are not even allowed in those bounds. And I think it really comes down to the academic elite who think they own the narratives of everything. And, Elizabeth Warren is an academic elite. And the notion of the academic elites is they know better, that you're stupid. And this is why, gave rise to Trump, because everyday people in this country were tired of these elites thinking they knew everything. And I think what you're talking about is these elites are really the fascists, because they control what science you can do, and in fact, what discourse you can have. So I think it really comes down to, when you unravel the layers, you really got to go at the academic system, which has essentially become a very, very corrupt system.
Also,
sorry. All right, Kat, you can. Kat just left. Lucas, go ahead and ask the last question. Lucas,
are you there, buddy?
Yes.
I can
sorry,
take
my
one
microphone was muted.
Lucas?
Yep.
If you were elected and there was to be a bill put forward in the Senate, like let's say proposing a universal basic income nationwide, would you support that? Would you support the idea? Like even if it wasn't the specifics, like now,
I
would
think
you?
who is it? Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have proposed this, right?
Yes, they've talked about it.
It's an interesting thing, right? you know, I'm not sure what it really means, you know?
Well, it would be it'd be kind of like giving
everyone,
everyone Social Security, basically.
yeah, from the day that they're born, right? Or at some point, right?
Yes, like if that's the, like, there's different ways of thinking about it, but one of the ways to think about it would be everyone gets like a paycheck every month from the day they're born to the day they die, and it's kind of gets, and that way you don't have the need for a lot of these other social programs like welfare. Like you can completely get rid of that because everyone's receiving the same amount of extra money. Everyone's on the same level playing field. It's an automatic pump for money into the economy because then poor people will always have money to spend, and so it'll just keep on flowing. And
well, let me
in
tell
all
you what this sounds like. Let me tell you what.
well.
Yeah, it all sounds interesting, right? You have to understand, Elon Musk lives on government subsidies, and that's how he's built all of his companies. So he's coming from an interesting position where he's coming from. Here's my view on this. That, you know, in the old days, I don't know if you know, there used to be the company store. You ever heard of this? Workers would work in the mines, and they'd get a wage, and they also have to shop from the general store that the company owned. So the money just flowed from one pocket to another pocket. And people were essentially chained to the coal mines. They could never move beyond that. And, you know, there's a lot of things that have to be really looked at. This is, are you just creating a company store so the bourgeois in this country can have a bunch of slaves working for them?
Well, the thing is, we already have a company store in this country called Walmart, and they have so they get more money from the government every year than any other like social program, and all of their workers need welfare, and then they also get direct subsidies, and then all of the welfare money that the workers get gets spent at Walmart. So like if you were to have the universal basic income, they would have enough money to spend on their own that they wouldn't have to spend all of their income at Walmart. And also unrelated, but like for a different question, you know, that also has to do with unions as well. And would you fight for unions?
Well, you know, yeah, I can come back to that, but I think the bigger issue here is that what we've created in this country is we've decimated major infrastructure in this country. And this is a very complex question, but the core of it is, you know, when my parents came here in 1970, here were extremely well-educated people, probably a serious brain trust of India, who transferred over here. And the government let in very smart people in the 70s, so they didn't have to address the issues of not building the infrastructure in this country. And we do that with illegal immigrants also. So on the one hand, it seems like a cool thing, oh, I'm supporting illegal immigrants, but the reality is we've essentially used illegal immigrants, exploited them by keeping them as illegal immigrants, so they're always in fear. And the larger issue is the extremely wealthy people are always looking for ways to minimize their costs and their expenses. So they want to pay the minimum amount and keep their, you know, slave labor essentially somewhat happy, but never really address the fundamental issues of, are you going to educate enough people so people could take on and be innovative and creative and create completely different worlds instead of create a Walmart nation? And what I see all of this is about is, you know, a set of people in Malibu and the East Coast and West Coast can have their Teslas, and they can live very well. And then there's going to be a bunch of people who are sort of getting this, you know, sort of an okay life. Something about it doesn't feel right to me.
All right.
And I think the real issue is unleashing innovation, unleashing both tech schools, retraining people, making sure people are actually getting 21st century education. Because that's what's going to help us create, you know, real machines that can travel to the stars, not one guy like Elon Musk saying he's going to take us to Mars. I mean, it's a massive narcissistic model that we're creating. We're not unleashing people's incredible skills by allowing them to learn incredible knowledge.
So would you support making public college tuition free?
I think what I would do is, first of all, we need the whole notion of college is unnecessary. We need to eliminate student loans completely. When I built the first email system when I was a 14-year-old kid, I learned more before I came to MIT because I was working with 30 people, 30, 40 years older than me. You learn when you work. This notion of, okay, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, and I'm going to learn all this. People are learning nothing. In Massachusetts, for example, for every 17 skilled job openings, only one person is skilled. I hire people for my companies. Most students can't even write an email. These are quote unquote people with good degrees. They don't know how to talk to customers. They don't have basic skills. So what I think we need to do is, first of all, eliminate the need, eliminate student loans completely. Eliminate them. People should work. Number two, we need to make sure community colleges can offer degree programs. We need to unleash vo-tech schools. And you need to change the educational model, because most of the stuff you can learn online, the educational experience should all be based on actually doing something, and then you learn the knowledge to support that. We need to completely flip it all around. We have we don't have a 21st century educational model. We have an old industrial educational model.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Shiva. We are 9 minutes past your 11 p.m. hard deadline. I'm sorry about that.
Well, if you want me to take one more question, I can. If Yvonne, it's up to you.
Oh, yeah, sure. That would be awesome. So Taylor was waiting. Go ahead, Taylor.
All right, so I'll just make this a quick question. Since you seem like a progressive Republican, I was wondering if you would at all be interested in joining brand new Congress, since they already have another Republican in there who's Rob Reverse, who's trying to run for 3rd District of Arkansas for 2018 election.
I don't know. Who is this guy? Brandon? What's his name?
Rob Reversa. Revervas. I can't really pronounce the name.
Oh, so what's your question? Do I support him or do I want to join with him? I'm not sure.
No, if you would support like brand new Congress. Like, have you ever heard of brand new Congress?
Brandon Congress?
Brand new Congress.
So there are new progressive movements. One of them is called Brand New Congress, and the other is Justice Democrats. Brand New Congress, however, supports Republicans who hold what I guess we would call progressive views. So Taylor is asking you if that's something that you would be interested in joining up with, or
yeah. I mean, look, look. I don't think the founders of this country ever wanted these two parties. The whole thing's a freaking racket. The last 120 days, for me in 1984, when I saw Jesse Jackson create the Rainbow Coalition, I thought, wow, cool anti-establishment. Then he was essentially the left wing of the Democratic Party, and he sold everyone out to Mondale. Bernie Sanders did the same thing, sold all his votes to Hillary Clinton. It's been a recurring pattern in America where you have the establishment, you have the change agents, and then you have the not so obvious establishment, people who speak a rhetoric of change and hope and revolution, be it Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but they're really the left. They're what I call the not so obvious establishment. They're the third more insidious element. And I think, so that's how I look at the world and politics. And this is a recurrent aspect in not only the United States, all over the world. In India, you had the British Raj. You had people who wanted to kick out the British and have a progressive nationalism. And you had Gandhi, who was a not so obvious establishment. He basically set back India 70 years. So you have this, when you use the word progressive, I don't know what that means. I think what we need people to look at problems rationally, which is what the founders wanted. They were deists. They believed there was a creator, that there were natural laws, and we as human beings were supposed to use our brains to understand how things worked and not be ideological. And what we've done is we've created all these labels: left, right, liberal, conservative, progressive, reactionary, whatever you want to use. They have nothing to do with reality. I'll give you an example. So I think people are learning way too many labels and people are not learning how to use their brains to use a systems approach to actually look at problems rationally. And this is a very, very dangerous model for moving anything forward, because you just start labeling things. Oh, he's he's against the Paris Accords, right winger. He supports, he's against Monsanto, left winger. You see what I'm saying? I find myself, I can easily expose Monsanto and I can easily expose the Paris Accords when you take a very rational approach. I think we need to start teaching people how to think with common sense and look at things rationally without ideology. So I don't believe in a lot of these factions. I think they just create divisiveness, and no one really has to apply their brain.
Sorry, I wanted to ask one question. I'm sorry. So I noticed that you're running as a Republican candidate. Why not as an independent or non-affiliated candidate?
Well, it's a good question. When I was at MIT, I realized that both parties are completely nonsense. When I saw Trump run, I said, wow, this guy's cool. He's using that platform, and it's clearly Trump's not a Republican or a Democrat, let's be very honest. And he was eviscerating the establishment. He was attacking the media, which is awesome. So I said, you know what? You either listen to Channel 7 or you listen to Channel 9, but there's only 2 channels. So I said, let me go as a Republican, because I surely don't like the Democrats, because they're the epitome of hypocrisy. They're white supremacists, they're racist, and they're just better than Republicans in terms of PR. But I'll tell you, in the last 120 days in Massachusetts, I realized the Republicans and the Democrats work in collusion. Wherever I go, we get standing ovations when we speak, but I'm their nightmare, because the Republicans always want to collude with the Democrats. So, if they don't treat me right, I'll definitely go independent, because we've built enough of a brand equity. We don't need them or their party machinery. But I can tell you that I think in the ideal model, everyone should run without any party affiliation as an independent. But the way they've done TV advertising, which by the way is breaking down, which is good, and the need for all these consultants in the parties, which actually, as you go through it, you realize you don't really need them. So I think the point is that right now I see them as 2 channels, which the masses have access to. But I think we're built, if they don't treat me right, I'll definitely seriously consider running as an independent. And we probably have a much, much easier way to win that way than running, in fact, as a Republican.
All right. Well, it was very, very great of you to come on and answer questions. I don't think there's any candidate that really does that, especially the 2 political parties, the Democrats and Republicans. So we thank you very much. If anyone wants to follow,
great questions, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very smart people, very impressed by all your questions.
Thank you very much. So if anyone wants to follow and support Dr. Shiva, you can go to his website, shivaforsenate.com. You can also volunteer. Dr. Shiva, any last words before we sign off?
Yeah, I think the last word is, I think we're at a very interesting point in human history where we have incredible technologies, incredible solutions that can create a real renaissance. Or we can go into serious darkness also, as long as the academic elites, as long as career politicians, and as long as the military-industrial complex controls all of this. But I think if people can really recognize that the greatness of this country comes from people who actually do work for a living, who actually have skills, not career politicians, and we need to get rid of every single one of them. That's really my last word. They serve nobody but themselves. They're all essentially exploiters.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Aloha.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on.
Greatly appreciate it. You take care.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
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 Aloha. That was cool.
Yeah,
Alright.
Same. Mine was the most awkward question. It's just, I had to just rush it out there because I didn't have much time.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the feed and go directly to after hours. Ella, you gotta learn to mute your YouTube stream.
Eric, are you doing after hours?
Oh yeah,
No,
I'm
I
gonna join.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Do you want me to do it on your channel, Eric, or do you want to just leave it on mine?
You can leave it on yours. What you call it? Because I'm gonna be on for like about maybe like until midnight at least.
Okay, so I'll stop the feed. You guys stay on Ring Central.
Okay.